It's brash, belligerent, and loud in all the best ways possible. It's a car that got banned from NASCAR for being too fast. A car that died and came back to life after 20 years of silence. And now it is being reimagined once again. This is the muscle car, the absolute embodiment of American badassery at its absolute peak. It's the Dodge Charger, and this is the rundown of the death of a legend. Let's go. Okay, you might not want to hear this, but the Hemi's not coming, guys. There is no V8 option. But hear me out. This isn't gonna be a sloppy refresh of an iconic name. Nah, this is a transformation in every sense of the word. This new Charger is entering the space age with turbochargers, alien level looks, and just as much swag as it had before. It's also going head to head with some familiar faces that it's never challenged before. Cars like the Nissan GTR, the M3, and many more. So, what were they working with? A lot. And for the very first time in the 21st century, the Charger will have both a 2-door and 4-door option. Power plants, well, you're gonna have some choices to make. Both door plans will have the option for the turbocharged 6-pack straight 6 engine, standard output 420 horses, or a high output 550. Plus Dodge, well, they're bringing back the Daytona models. But yeah, they're only gonna be electric. Guys, I know, Dodge had to make peace with the whole EV muscle car thing, and as a result, the Daytona Scat Pack will be the most powerful of them all at launch. Sporting a ridiculous 670 horses. Daytona RTs will have the 496 electric horsepower setup, and all of these Chargers will come standard with all-wheel drive. And maybe, just maybe, there will be a rear drive variant in the future. Although, all we can do right now is cross our fingers. It's got a sexy throwback Coke bottle body, taking us all the way back to the late 60s with the iconic full-width sunken grille and squared-off features. I mean, it's about as close as Dodge could get to a 1968 Charger. Inside has been fully modernized, and Dodge slapped in a pistol grip shifter, throwing it back to the Hearst era. Yeah, or just ask your dad, Brad, or Trav, especially if any of them rocked a mullet in the 80s. And for the folks that like to hit the bottle, no, not that one, this bottle, Dodge gave you the option to equip your Charger with a direct connection power kit that gives your car a 40 horsepower boost for 15 seconds. And boy, it does not end there. Real quick, check out the Dodge Charger Hellcat tee. Now, this thing is sick, and it gives 0 fucks. Linked in the pinned first comment below. Limited to 100, so snag them before they're gone. Yeah, you get a line lock, launch control, drift-in donut modes, so you can drag race people literally anywhere, and maybe even go to a takeover. Okay, jokes aside, don't do that. All things considered, I'm stoked for the 8th gen Charger, but the mere existence of a Turbo 6 and EV option is proof that they've come a long way in the lineage of this particular car. Like, a long way. Because its origins, well, it's pretty unbelievable. Just listen.
In the early to mid 60s, Dodge was pissed because of 2 little letters, GM. And it wasn't for the reasons you got upset when your 2006 Chevy Cobalt threw a rod. You see, at the time, GM was killing it in the muscle car game. The Pontiac GTO, Oldsmobile 442, Chevy Chevelle, and soon-to-be Camaro were all the go-tos for hot rodders with dreams of big power and street domination. Add in a little thing called the Mustang, and it's no secret that Dodge was sweating and needed a car that could punch back. Enter Lynn Townsend, the then president of Chrysler. He went around to his own dealerships and begged them to come up with something to kick the other 2 members of the Big Three squarely where it hurts most. To get a head start, Dodge's designers decided to cook up a tasty little concept. It was long, low, wide, and had a futuristic design that was topped off by this crazy roll bar thingy and some spicy racing stripes for good measure. Importantly, it gave the people hope that Dodge was ready to come out swinging. But maybe the most important part of the whole concept was the name. It was called the Charger. The public was stoked and had a reason to look forward to a new Dodge sports car. At the time, an unknown dealer representative said they should do something like the Plymouth Barracuda, a two-door fastback powered by a V8. And with this in mind, Dodge gave the public the Dodge Dart GT Charger, a trim package for the Dart that was slightly more upscale and performant. It wasn't exactly the car Dodge needed to kick Ford and GM's ass, and they only sold 150 units, but it was a step in the right direction nonetheless. Finally, Townsend took the advice of literally everyone, and he went ahead with the plans for a fully baked muscle car that would take the fight right to Ford and GM's doors. And it would be called the Dodge Charger. It would sit on the then current Coronet platform and hopefully make Dodge the king of the horsepower hill. And in what can only be described as the most American thing ever, Dodge first launched the Charger in a commercial for the 1966 Rose Bowl football game, calling it the new leader of the Dodge Rebellion. A sentiment that would prove to be true for the next 50 or so years and beyond.
If you bought a first-gen Charger, much like the current model, you had more options than you could imagine.
Imagination!
You could get a V8 in a 5.2, 5.9, 6.3, or the diabolical 7-liter Hemi configuration, ranging from 230 horsepower all the way up to a pavement-punishing 425. In 1966, sales were around 37,000 total units. Not bad for a new model, although Ford sold 607,000 units of the Mustang in the same exact period. But the Mopar folks loved the Charger because what it lacked in sales, well, it made up with pure power on the drag strip. These things could be turned into quarter-mile winning machines. And with its own, distinct looks as well, you were going against the grain picking this bad boy up over a Mustang. But what Dodge did with the second gen was the real tire kick. Oh my god, it's so hot. I mean, these Tim's Cascade jalapeno kits, but the second gen Charger was fire as well. It's curvy, the hit's chiseled, and that beautiful body is sitting on top of a fire-breathing V8. Let's go. This generation was the first to introduce Richard Cias's Coke bottle styling, which visually stretched the body and put the rooflines towards the middle rather than the back, making the whole car look like a shark who's about to tear your limbs off. It looked fast standing still, and was so finger-licking good that it landed the lead in a little show called Dukes of Hazzard? A show which definitely helped make the car famous, even if they did total over 300 of them during the full production run. But the main focus of this Charger was NASCAR, baby. Shake and bake. It was the hottest racing in the States, folks, and the second generation Charger went all in. Poof! For 1969, Dodge introduced the Charger 500, which was based on the RT, but studded out with the Coronet's more aerodynamic grille, a flush rear window, and your choice of two insanely large V8s, the 370 horsepower 440 Magnum or the 425 horsepower 7-liter Hemi. Oh, what a time. I'm crying because of the spice, and I just touched my eye. Oh, God. They were winning, but not dominating. So, Dodge came out with the final homologation special, the Dodge Charger Daytona, baby. Sharing the purpose with the Plymouth Superbird, these two were NASCARs for the street, set up with wedged front clips, splitters, the same flush rear window as the 500, as well as the best wing to ever be fitted on any car, like, ever. I even hung my wet laundry from it once, and it worked great. But look at that thing without clothes on it. It makes the Viper ACR's huge wing look like child's play. And if the 500 wasn't enough to shoo off the competition in NASCAR, the Daytona and Superbird sure as were. It was the first car to hit 200 miles per. It was so successful, so dominant in their short run as race cars, that the Racing Coalition told them that they had to restrict their engine outputs first to make it fair for everyone else. And even that wasn't enough. So they banned both the Bird and Daytona from the competition altogether, essentially keeping NASCAR technology stuck in the late 1960s for a very, very long time. Yeah, this car single-handedly broke NASCAR and shrunk my favorite pair of jeans while it was at it. The Gen 2 was double trouble. Hit the gas and we find ourselves at the third gen. Ah, yes, the one that everyone hates. But don't scoff, because this one wasn't even close to as bad as you'd think. It was still styled like a classic muscle car, had big boy V8s, rear wheel drive, and a new fuselage styling from Dodge's design team. The 1971-74 Charger was a two-door version of Dodge's Coronet platform, which was used on a multitude of Chrysler products at the time. And even though it was following the most iconic Charger model of all time, buyers still came out in droves to purchase them. I mean, after the Daytona embarrassed NASCAR with its Patrick Mahomes-esque dominance,
that looked a little Mahomey.
Anything that said Charger on the back was gonna sell like hotcakes. Customers could choose from a few engines, including a 3.6-liter straight six, a 5.2, 6.3, and big boy 7.2-liter V8. And yes, I didn't forget about Hemis, but there was only 63 in Gen 3s through the whole production period. Yes, 63 total. And with that, the writing was on the wall. This was a whole new world for Dodge. They were so used to, well, fixing everything with power. But in the mid-70s, for Dodge and literally everyone else, that wasn't an option anymore. The 1975 Charger was admittedly choked in terms of power and performance aspirations thanks to the emission regulations and gas crisis. So instead of power, Dodge put the pedal to the metal on luxury. Now you could get the Charger in literally any color that you wanted, with plush leather and wood. That really made you want to smoke a whole pack of Camels while you were trying to get this thing to 60 miles per hour. Because the former fire-breathing V8s were running out of breath. With horsepower ratings from 100 to 200 horses, it was very dodgy for the boys at Dodge. It's just shocking looking back and seeing the divergence from the badass muscle car Chargers of the 60s that turned into a luxury car. But to everyone back then, this was par for the course during a dark era for the auto industry as a whole. This is, of course, the 5th gen Dodge Charger, the one that everyone thought would be the last one ever, and technically it was for almost 20 years. Say goodbye to the V8 era and hello to front-wheel drive, baby. You see, Dodge was coming off the malaise era of the 70s and needed to offer the public a nameplate that was recognizable. But it had to be an economy car at its core. The man to take on the helmet Dodge was Lee Iacocca, the brilliant mind behind cars like, oh, I don't know, the Mustang, the Jeep Cherokee, the Viper. It was a match that Chrysler could only have dreamed of at a time where they were losing over $500 million a year. And on the brink of financial disaster, Iacocca and team introduced affordable economy cars like the Dodge Omni. Yeah, great for the bottom line, but not for Mopar peeps that fell in love with the brand. So they introduced the Charger with really interesting engine options. First, a 1.7-liter four-banger source from a Volkswagen that made 70 raging horses. Next, a 1.6-liter Peugeot that made 64 horses. And then a bigger 2.2-liter inline-four that made a whopping 94 horsepower. Mopar fans were literally about to riot. So, to keep the peace, Chrysler made some changes that led to one of the coolest front-wheel drive cars in existence. The VP of Chrysler and certified cool guy Bob Lutz, who with Iacocca brought the Mustang to life, gave his good buddy, Mr. Carroll freaking Shelby, a call. He said something like, "Shelby, I need you to add some beef to this new Charger," or something like that. The result, the Dodge Shelby Charger. More aggressive tires, a sportier suspension, a pedal box that was made for heel-toe downshifts. This thing was cool, but it only had 107 horsepower. But you know that Shelby wasn't having none of that. Demanding more horsepower, the Shelby Charger got a turbocharger that almost doubled horsepower to 174. These changes gave the Mopar gang some much needed adrenaline to believe in Chrysler again. And by the mid-80s, thanks to econo boxes and the souped up Charger, Dodge started making money again. But Shelby, he ain't done. To celebrate the financial successes and the sunsetting of the 5th gen, Shelby personally bought up the last 1,000 Shelby Chargers from Dodge, and then converted all of them to GLHSs, which stands for Goes Like Hell Some More. They were all optioned the exact same way, all had 175 horses, and were all upgraded with Centurion 2 wheels. a Shelby staple, plus Coney adjustable shocks, and a speedo that read all the way up to 125 miles per hour. And because they were all done by Shelby Automotive, well, there isn't a Dodge badge anywhere on this car. And the Charger moniker in 1987 was put out to the pasture for good, or so we thought. Years have passed, and it's the mid-90s, and Chrysler is killing it. The Charger is now a thing of the past, but sales of the minivan were through the roof. Their new Ram trucks were the hottest, freshest trucks on the market. The Neon was making a name for itself as a genuinely worthy competitor to Japanese imports, and to top it all off, the Viper was making huge waves in the industry. Suddenly, Chrysler was the brand Americans had their eyes on. They had made money, they were trying stuff. Stuff like the Demon, which was to be America's answer to the Miata. The Sidewinder, which was a callback to the age of the muscle truck. The Prowler, which somehow actually made it into production? And wait, the Charger? That's right, folks. Charger was back in concept form in 1999. It was a sharp, mean design that took inspiration from the golden years of the namesake. It had a V8 under the hood, but it was fueled by compressed natural gas, and unfortunately, a production version never saw the light of day. In 2005, after a merger between Chrysler and Daimler, the Charger would finally make a return. You see, this little small German manufacturer called Mercedes. You ever heard of them? They allowed the Americans to use the old W201 chassis as a jumping off point for their new LX platform, which would give birth to two icons before the Charger ever rematerialized, the Chrysler 300 and the Dodge Magnum. I mean, they were fabulous cars, you guys. The 300 sedan won Car of the Year in 2006 and made a gigantic impact on hip-hop culture with things like the Dub Edition and the fact that it was the American luxury car at the time. As for the Magnum, it brought American wagons back into the cool category and did it with a nearly perfect chassis underneath. So it was a no-brainer to give the 300 and Magnum a little new brother to share all that success with. And then out came a name that no one had seen in 20 years or even expected to come back at all for that matter. Dodge Charger. In a sick, twisted way, you could say the Charger is the love child of the 300 and Magnum. I mean, Magnum is literally in the name, so yeah, this thought needs to end. The Mutant Child 6th Gen Charger grew an extra set of doors, drove the rear wheels, and brought the V8 back, baby. Okay, it did have a pair of V6s available, but the real ones, well, they opted for the 340 horsepower 5.7 liter Hemi or the 6.1 liter Hemi with the 425 horses. And Dodge owners could finally do this again. This is where shit gets real. For 2011, Dodge was finally freed from the chains of the Daimler-Chrysler conglomerate. They had more freedom to spend resources on things like, well, a better interior, more modern styling, and of course, more power. All engines got power boosts, including the 5.7 liter Hemi, which made its way to 370 horsepower. Dodge also offered a brand new, and in predictable Dodge fashion, bigger 6.4 liter Hemi that made 470 horses. At the time, the 6.4 Hemi was the most savage engine in the most balls out Charger ever. Yeah, the SRT8. A car that had stiffer suspension, sticky Goodyear tires, and a wickedly quick 0 to 60 time of just 4.3 seconds. That's pretty cool, huh? I agree, I think. Wait, what's that? Yeah, I told you shit was getting real. For 2015, the Charger received a curvy facelift, an interior upgrade, and the most iconic Charger model we all know far too well, the Hellcat. With 707 supercharged horsepower, this was King Tire Destroyer and honestly, still is. The Charger also got a standard 8-speed automatic transmission that allowed things like launch control and snappier shifts. For 2021, the Hellcat lineage grew up into the Red Eye. And what did they do? Well, say it with me. More power. 797 of the stuff to be exact. It received some bodybuilder wide-body fenders, bigger tires, sexy interior colors, and a bunch more. And because nearly 800 horsepower is crazy in a street car, Dodge didn't push it any further than that. Okay, they actually did with the 810 horsepower Jailbreak Edition, but I mean, have you learned anything about Dodge? Of course they do that. And with almost 60 years under our belt, we go back to, well, today, where the Charger was morphed once again. The 7th gen Charger is coming sooner than you think, with models set to be delivered next year. And we are stoked to see what a Dodge turbocharged straight six sounds like and what an EV Daytona will feel like. And I know some of y'all are worried that Dodge is abandoning their V8 roots in favor of tree-hugging EVs, but don't worry folks. Dodge's launch video literally said that the whole EV thing isn't about saving the earth, but about performance. After years of automakers swearing that they're going electric for environmental reasons, Dodge is giving us a breath of fresh air and coupled with badass cars that go with it. And don't get us wrong, supercharged V8s are fun as hell and they sound amazing. But this 7th gen Charger marks yet another important moment in the Charger timeline, just as the 5th gen Charger did when it ditched the V8s. You see, that turbocharged 5th gen was shat on by purists in the past, but now? People would give their left nut for a 170 horsepower Turbo 4 powered hatchback from the 80s. And this new Charger? Well, turbocharged straight sixes are always a riot, especially when they come with the additional performance tech like this one will. So, keep your head up. The Charger may be forging a different and uncomfortable path for a lot of enthusiasts, but this is the death of a Charger that we once knew, but the legacy will live on for a very long time. And if there's one thing that we know about Dodge, they always know how to surprise the hell out of all of us. So, which generation is your favorite? And what are your feelings about that new generation Charger? If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell for new Ideal content coming out all the time. And check out these vids over here. I'm Brad, this is Ideal. See you guys next week, and promise me one thing, keep living the Ideal lifestyle.